I used to really enjoy gambling. Nothing crazy, but I genuinely liked going to the casino, putting a little money down, and seeing what happened. These days, I don't really go to the casino anymore. Apparently, I found a much more complicated way to gamble. I started a business. Because when you really think about it, owning a small business is basically a series of bets. Every time I pay a booth fee for a market, I'm betting that enough people will show up and some of them will actually buy something. Every time I order supplies for a new design, I'm betting that somebody besides me is going to love what I make with them. Every promotion I run is a bet. Every new product is a bet. Every opportunity I say yes to is a bet. And this week, I placed a brand new kind of bet for Pretty Pineapple Bead. I sent my first ever PR package to a creator who cold emailed me. And as I'm recording this, that package is currently somewhere between Minnesota and her mailbox. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. And weirdly, I'm kind of excited about that. Hey friend, welcome back to Sparkle and Shine. I'm your host, Cassandra, and this is the podcast where we talk about building a small business, chasing your dreams, and learning the real lessons along the way. Each week, I'll be sharing what I'm learning in my own business, the wins, the struggles, and the lessons that come along with it. So if you're building something of your own too, you're definitely in the right place. All right, let's get into today's episode. The email I almost assumed was a scam. So this whole thing started with an email. And if you're a small business owner with a website, you probably know exactly where this is going. Because I get cold emails all the time. And most of them are basically some variation of, I noticed problems with your website. Let me help you rank higher on Google. Or, if I can bring you 15 sales a day, would you be interested in working with me? Or they want me to message them on WhatsApp. You know the ones. They're usually written in a very specific way where you read the first sentence and you're thinking, yeah, absolutely not. So when I saw another email come through from somebody that I didn't know, I was a little suspicious. But this one was different. She wasn't giving me some generic pitch that could have been copied and pasted to 500 different businesses. She specifically mentioned my colorful bracelets, and she talked about how she thought my jewelry would fit with her style and aesthetic. And I immediately thought, okay, you actually looked at my stuff. She explained that she creates YouTube content and asked if I would be interested in sending her some jewelry that she could feature in an unboxing video. And once I got past my initial scam radar, I have to admit, I was kind of flattered. Somebody found Pretty Pineapple Bead. They liked what they saw enough to reach out to me, and they wanted to share it with their audience. I've actually thought about working with influencers and creators before. I just never really have done anything with that idea. Part of the problem was that I didn't know who I should reach out to. There are obviously millions of creators online, so how do you figure out who actually makes sense for your brand? How big should their audience be? What do you offer them? What do you ask for in return? I didn't know. So, like a lot of things in my business, it became one of those ideas that lived somewhere in the back of my brain until somebody came to me. Doing a little investigating. Now, I definitely wasn't going to immediately respond to a random email with, sure, where should I send the free stuff? No, I wanted to at least do a little investigating first. So I went to her YouTube channel. She has a little over 4,000 subscribers, and I started looking through her videos. I wanted to see whether she was actively creating content, what kind of videos she made, what her personality was like, and especially whether she'd done other unboxing style content. And she had. There were quite a few videos on her channel. It was clear that she hadn't created the account yesterday just to start emailing businesses to ask for free products. And as I looked through her content, I realized she was younger than I initially expected. From what I could tell, I believe she's around the 8th grade age range. And honestly, there was something about that made me root for her a little bit. Because here's this young girl putting herself out there, creating videos, building an audience, contacting brands, and figuring out how all of this works. And I remember what it was like to have big ideas when I was younger. Hell, I'm 39 and I'm still figuring out what I'm doing half the time. So I thought, okay, let's give this a shot. Deciding what I was actually willing to risk. So I still had to decide what I was comfortable offering. And this is where I think the business lesson really started for me. Because I could send her $100 worth of jewelry. I could send 200. I could send one bracelet. There wasn't necessarily a correct number. I had to figure out what felt fair to her while also making sense for my business. I settled on $40. I gave her a promo code worth $40 on the Pretty Pineapple Bead website, and I told her she could choose whichever pieces she wanted. And $40 felt like a pretty comfortable number for me. It was enough that she could choose a few things and actually have something interesting to unbox, but it also wasn't so much that I was going to be devastated if absolutely nothing comes from this collaboration. And there's another important distinction here. $40 in retail value is not the same thing as $40 coming out of my pocket. Based on the specific products she chose, plus a mystery grab bag, which I put in there as an extra little gift, I would estimate my actual cost of goods to be somewhere around $20. So essentially, I'm risking around $20 in product cost, plus my time and shipping, to see what happens when my brand is introduced to an audience of more than 4,000 YouTube subscribers. Could absolutely nothing happen? Yep. Could one person find me? Yeah. Could 10 people? 100? Could somebody watch her video, follow Pretty Pineapple Bead, and not buy something for another 6 months? Absolutely. I don't know that, and that's the bet. Why I let her pick the jewelry. One thing I knew pretty quickly was that I wanted her to choose her own pieces. She specifically mentioned my colorful seed bead bracelets, which are a part of my essential color collection. That collection has 18 different colors. I could have picked 5 colors that I personally love and mailed them to her, but what if she hates orange? What if she never wears yellow? What if she's obsessed with pink and purple and I send her blue and green? I don't want somebody to open a Pretty Pineapple Bead package on camera and have to manufacture excitement about something they never would have chosen for themselves. I want her to actually like it because, yes, I want the YouTube video, but I would love for the relationship with my brand to extend beyond one video. I want her to wear those bracelets. I want her to reach for them when she's getting dressed. I want someone to see them on her wrist someday and say, "Oh my gosh, I love your bracelet." And I want her to be able to genuinely say, "Thanks, I got it from Pretty Pineapple Bead." That's the kind of word of mouth marketing I want. Not because somebody is contractually obligated to say they like my jewelry, but because they actually do. So I let her shop, and she chose 3 bracelets from the Essential Color collection and 2 bracelets from my Make Room for More color sale. And then when I packed her order today, I threw in a mystery grab bag as a little extra gift because obviously, if we're doing an unboxing, let's give her something fun to actually unbox. I packaged everything up just like I would a regular Pretty Pineapple Bead order. I even recorded my normal little order packing video. And after work today, I dropped it off at the post office. The tracking estimate says it should arrive sometime between Monday and Wednesday next week. And now we wait. So, what does success even look like here? I've been thinking about what I actually want to happen from this. And obviously, sales. Let's not pretend otherwise. Pretty Pineapple Bead is a business. I would absolutely love for her to post this video and suddenly get a bunch of orders. Please, universe, feel free. I'm totally available for that outcome. But I'm also genuinely curious just to see what happens. Maybe I get website traffic. Maybe I gain some followers. Maybe a few people discover Pretty Pineapple Bead for the first time, and maybe I get some sales. Maybe this introduces my brand to an entirely different group of people than I'm currently reaching. And maybe absolutely nothing measurable happens. That's possible too. I have had other opportunities in my business where I couldn't necessarily draw a straight line between the opportunity and the revenue. Earlier this year, Pretty Pineapple Bead was named Most Colorful Jewelry in Minnesota for 2026 through Lux Life Magazine's Perfect Gift Awards. Did I suddenly get 100 orders because of it? No. But now I can say my business has received that recognition. I've been able to share it with my audience, and it gives me another little piece of social proof. I've also been interviewed by Voyage Minnesota. Again, I can't tell you that interview directly generated a specific dollar amount, but it gave me another opportunity to tell my story, another place for somebody to discover my business, another piece of content that I can share. And I think sometimes, especially as small business owners, we want everything to have an immediately measurable return. I spent this much, so I should make that much. I did this interview, so I should get this many customers. I sent this product, so I should make this many sales. But marketing doesn't always work that neatly. Sometimes the return is exposure. Sometimes it's credibility. Sometimes it's content. Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes it's experience. And sometimes the return is simply learning whether you ever want to do that particular thing again. I'm already learning from this one. And that's actually already happening with this collaboration. Because before I even dropped the package at the post office, I realized, okay, if I'm going to start doing more creator collaborations, I need an actual process for this. This first one has been pretty casual. We exchanged some emails. We talked about what she wanted to do. I gave her the code. She placed the order. I shipped it. Done. But if this becomes something I start to do more regularly, I want to create some kind of simple collaboration agreement. Nothing ridiculous. I am not trying to hand somebody a 72-page legal contract for 3 bracelets. But I do think that both sides should know what they're agreeing to. What content are you creating? Where is it being posted? Approximately when will it be posted? Does Pretty Pineapple Bead have permission to reuse that video? Will there be a website link included? And eventually, maybe I create a system where creators will get their own discount code too. Then their audience gets, let's say, like 10% off. So the creator has something valuable to offer their community, and I can actually track whether sales are coming from that collaboration. Those are things I wasn't necessarily thinking through before, but now I am, which means this experiment has already taught me something, and I haven't even seen the video yet. My new version of gambling. And that brings me back to what I said at the beginning. I used to enjoy gambling. These days, my gambling looks a little different. My business is the gamble. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm realizing that entrepreneurship requires you to make decisions without knowing the outcome. Every single market I sign up for is a gamble. I can research the event. I can ask other vendors about it. I can look at attendance estimates. I can see how long the event has existed. I can look at how they're marketing it. I can make the prettiest booth possible. And then I can show up and make $19. Ask me how I know. And on the other hand, I can actually try some random little market without expecting much and have an amazing day. You just don't know. Every time I create something new, I'm taking another little gamble. I buy the beads. I spend the time designing it. I photograph it. I list it online. I put it in my booth. And then I wait to see whether somebody else sees what I saw when I created it. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they absolutely do not. That's business. But there is a difference between a gamble and a reckless bet. And I think this is probably the part I've learned to pay more attention to over the years. You have to decide how much you are willing to risk. Because there's a huge difference between experimenting with your business in throwing money at something because you're desperate for it to work. And trust me, I understand the desperation, especially lately. I've talked pretty openly on this podcast about the fact that my summer market season hasn't brought in the money that I originally hoped it would. I've talked about going back to my part-time job. I've talked about financial pressure. So when you're in a season where you really want more sales, it would be very easy to think, maybe I need to spend $500 on this. Maybe I need to buy this course. Maybe I need to pay for this opportunity. Maybe I need to send hundreds of dollars worth of products to creators. Maybe this will finally be the thing. And I don't think desperation is a good place to make those decisions from. Because throwing money at something because you desperately need it to work sounds like a really fast way to lose your money. For this collaboration, I decided what I was willing to lose before I ever said yes. And approximately $20 in product costs? Okay. If this experiment goes nowhere, I can live with that. Would I be disappointed? Sure. Would my business be in trouble because of it? No. And that's a risk I'm comfortable taking. What are you willing to lose to learn? I think that's becoming one of my favorite questions when I'm trying something new. Not just how much could this make me, but what happens if it doesn't? If I pay a booth fee and make $0, can my business absorb that? If I created a new collection and it doesn't sell, how much inventory am I sitting on? If I spend money advertising something and it flops, am I okay? If I gift product to a creator and nothing happens, can I chalk it up to an experiment and move forward? Because if the answer is yes, maybe it's a bet worth placing. And obviously, sometimes business requires bigger risks. But I think there's something really powerful about small experiments. You don't always need to completely overhaul your business. Sometimes you can say, I'm going to put $20 behind this idea and see what happens. I'm going to try this one market. I'm going to send this one PR package. I'm going to test this one promotion. I'm going to make 5 of this product instead of 50. And then I'm going to pay attention. What happened? What worked? What didn't? What would I change? Would I do it again? That's how you start building information instead of just guessing. And right now, I don't know the ending. The funny thing about recording this episode today is that I can't wrap this story up for you. There's no case study yet. I can't say, I sent $40 worth of jewelry to a YouTube creator and made $700. But I also can't say, well, that was a disaster. Here's what I learned. Because neither of those things has happened. The package isn't even there yet. It's literally in transit. And I actually like documenting it this way because this podcast has never been about me sitting on the other side of some perfectly successful business telling you exactly how to do everything. I am building right alongside you. I'm experimenting. I'm making mistakes. I'm changing my mind. I'm trying things. Sometimes I'm celebrating. Sometimes I'm working a market in ridiculous heat for $19. Sometimes I'm sitting in my car at the post office thinking, well, let's see what happens. And that's exactly where this story is today. Let's see what happens. Maybe I'll come back in a few weeks and I'll tell you this little collaboration turned into something incredible. Maybe it becomes the beginning of a whole creator strategy for Pretty Pineapple Bead. Maybe I start regularly working with small creators whose audience fit my brand. Maybe this brings in new customers. Maybe it brings in one. Maybe none. I genuinely don't know. But that's kind of the point. We don't get to know the outcome of every decision before we make it. And if we waited until we could guarantee something would work before we tried it, I don't think any of us would ever build anything. Sometimes you research, you ask questions, you look at the potential upside, the potential downside, and you decide what you're comfortable risking. And then you place the bet. 9 years into Pretty Pineapple Bead, I'm still placing new bets. I'm still trying things I've never done before. I'm still learning what works for my business. And honestly, I think that's exciting. So if there's something that you've been thinking about trying in your own business, maybe don't only ask yourself, what if this doesn't work? Ask yourself, what am I willing to risk to find out? Because those are two very different questions. And sometimes a small, calculated bet might teach you something you never would have learned by playing it safe. So, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And hopefully, sometime soon, I'll have an update for you about how this particular little business gamble turns out. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me again next week. Until next time, keep showing up with heart, believe in yourself, and keep shining.